Sufficient for a day is its own evil. Our gospel ended with that sentence. It's a great way to tie this gospel up nice and neat, unless, of course, we don't get its meaning. So what could Jesus mean by this? Well, John Glenn was a pioneering astronaut who survived many space flights, a well-respected state senator, and an ordained minister in the Presbyterian Church. He said he prayed every day during those early days of the space program. He pioneered the Mercury program, which was the program that put the first capsule in orbit around the Earth. The first time the Mercury capsule was to re-enter the Earth's atmosphere, the heat shield was thought to have come loose, and if so, the capsule would have burned up upon re-entry. John Glenn had to take manual control of the capsule and guide that capsule back to Earth, safely splashing it down in the Caribbean. He said he prayed the entire time this happened. He believed that God put the universe together and holds it there. He said, "It is the orderliness of the whole universe about us, from the smallest atomic structure to the most enormous thing we can imagine." Could this have just happened? I cannot believe that. This was a definite plan. This is one big thing in space that shows me there is a God. John Glenn has to believe in the orderliness of things due to his profession. If the engineers calculated even a second off schedule, it could spell disaster for the mission. Yet the astronaut was also an ordained Presbyterian minister. That means he accepted the words of Jesus, which today seem totally opposite of this exacting science John Glenn had staked his life on. Sufficient for a day is its own evil. It's a statement opposite from that orderliness of the universe that Glenn talked about. But it's the order that God wants us to follow. It's telling us to only entrust our day to God, not the things of this world. The gospel opens with a paragraph stating, "You cannot serve both God and mammon." Maybe if we knew the meaning of the word mammon, we would understand that final statement of sufficient for a day is its own evil. Mammon is from Hebrew, meaning to entrust. It's come to mean that which we put our trust in. Things like wealth, heroes, or even our own selves. It means that we trust in these things to the exclusion of anything or anyone else. This is where the conflict comes in. If one believes with all their heart that wealth will get them everything they need, or that they themselves are the be-all and end-all of anything, then we're not trusting in God, the one who has made the smallest atomic structure to the most enormous thing we can imagine. How can wealth, or a hero, or our own self construct anything that lasts for eons? Regardless of the things we accomplish, they may last a generation or two, if that long. Only God can and did make all that lasts. Ash Wednesday is a few days away. It reminds us of just this: ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Only God is eternal. So what does acquiring things, or that desire to acquire these things, matter? Jesus is not saying we can't acquire things. He's saying we should not entrust our being into the things of this world. When we do, we're serving the things of the world. We're serving mammon. If we want to serve God, then we need to put these things in proper perspective. We need to prioritize what is in our lives and what we want in our life. If it is God, then all else needs to take a back seat to Him. That is why Jesus brings in the example of the birds in the gospel. He says the birds do not sow or reap. They do not gather food into barns, yet they are well provided for by God. If God does this for them, and each one of us is more important to God than the birds, will he not care for each one of us as well? This being the case, then acquiring things, desiring to acquire things, is not putting priorities straight. It's not entrusting oneself to God. God will provide. He is promising us this. If we do not believe this, then we are acting against God, acting in a way that is opposite to good or evil. The day we spend collecting things is not what God would have us do. We should be incorporating all we do and say throughout the day with God in mind as we go about our daily activities. God then provides for us, taking each day as it comes, with God providing us the fulfillment that we seek. And that should be sufficient for each one of us each day. What is not good is spending our time chasing the things that which is contrary to God's ways and contrary to good or God, which is not good or evil. So we must accept that which God gives us each day and not set our sights on other things, because sufficient for a day is its own evil. The statement, "You cannot serve both God and mammon," is true when we realize that God is telling us to not put all of our faith in something other than Him. He bolsters that statement with, "Sufficient for a day is its own evil," because that statement is telling us that if we believe that God will care for us each day, then we would not put our trust in anyone or anything other than God, because if we do, it's not what He's asking us to do. Allowing our days to be given up to God is its own good. He will provide for us. He does every day. That's serving God. That is sufficient.